Usually, if a game has more than one title, I'll list the review with the name that the game was best known with. For instance, even though Europeans knew it as Probotector, the game is much better known as Operation C. Whether by coincidence or simply the size of markets, more often than not, the more common name is the one that a game was released under in North America. That wasn't the case here. Listeners across the pond would perhaps have heard of a game called Kingdom Crusade. I've gone with The Legend of Prince Valiant because that's what the European exclusive NES game was called, and also, let's face it, it just sounds cooler. Plus, the cartoon was pretty cool for early 90s kids. This is one of those things that falls into the criminally underappreciated works that I really want to strive to push further into the limelight, so to speak. If you're at all familiar with the NES title, this is not massively the same thing. Where that one was more of a straightforward, level-based adventure, this is a randomly generated strategy game. You don't just play as the Valiant Prince, but control an entire army of his faithful allies. You're the typical medieval good guy from the typical good guy kingdom, and your aim is to defeat the identical but polar opposite army of the Evil Cynan. The game takes place in a random world full of square areas. These quadrants can feature forests, open fields, or castles. The idea is to defeat the enemy's forces by either capturing all their castles or by eradicating them absolutely from the world. You take a castle by conquering all the land around it, by walking on it and staking your claim, killing any enemies that get in your way. The overview of the whole world shows where all of your and your foes' units are. Similar to how chess or something works, you move your pieces around until they rest on a tile occupied by an enemy. This is where the action part of the game starts. You now enter the zoomed down playing field, which is again randomly generated, which consists of quite a large area that scrolls around, within which will be a bad guy that you have to face one-on-one. You can move and attack in all 8 directions, and depending on which character you use, these have different health values, ranges, and attack strengths. You frenetically scrap with one another until one of you dies. Get to know which characters are best for venturing forth and being offensive with, and which are better to stay back and defend your strongholds. The king has well-rounded stats and is a dab hand at most things, whereas his queen much favours a long-range magic attack. The wizard is similar to the queen apart from a faster movement speed and lower jumping ability. Archers are pretty useful to make inroads into enemy territory as they're the fastest and most agile characters, and their bows do decent damage. Be astute if you choose to fight with them, however, as their defense and close-range combat skills are not so good. Keep your distance. You have a giant for the heavy-hitting stuff, but these are best used staying back and bolstering your territory. Funnily enough, the weakest character is Prince Valiant himself, as he has no ranged attack, and so you'll be forced to engage in hand-to-hand. He'd have more of a place in the ranks if only the game were a little more balanced. Getting stuck in with the melee is much tougher than darting in, firing a projectile of some kind, and then hopping away like Daffy Duck. Even the archers with a low HP and no defense turn out to be much more usable than the prince. You don't have to engage in combat to explore a zone in more detail. Press A on any tile to be taken to the viewpoint of the character in question. You can now walk around these areas, passing into others without having to go back to the overworld. If you're about to enter an area that has an enemy in it, the game will alert you to this. The reason you'd want to explore is because there are lots of pickups that give you health, strength, or speed upgrades, or supply your character with spells. You can pick up permanent character modifiers that add extra armor or speed, or a telescope that allows you to see further into enemy territory. You can find a pair of wings that allows you to change direction mid-jump, which is very useful in combat situations. There are lots of other things as well, things that bring a random character back to life, mix up the opponent's control scheme, very useful against a human opponent, something that makes you invisible for a short while, so many different things to find and learn. Prince Valiant, or Kingdom Crusade, whichever you prefer, is endlessly replayable due to each game starting out differently. Not only is everything random, but there are several customizations that you can apply before you start. A telling one that will determine the length of your match is the world size. Picking small gives you a 10 by 10 grid, right up to a 16 by 16 one for the large world. Depending on which you choose, your army is different. Picking a larger world will give you more characters, but obviously the enemy's forces are more numerous as well. You also need to specify the AI strength. The lowest one is pretty dim, wandering about aimlessly and not fighting very well. They'll only try to conquer a castle if they happen to run into one. Expert mode pits you against wily and aggressive enemies that will require constant attention. The gradient is well programmed, so you should be able to find a level that suits you. Another facet to the game configuration is the handicap. You can keep this in the center to fight a balanced match, or move the bar either way to favor one side. This will grant a side more land and warriors. A rather interesting random grade is allocated to all the characters at the start of the game, and this tweaks their skills a little bit. For instance, all the bowmen are fast by nature, but a grade A bowman will be faster still than a grade F one. The sound is great, the music what you'd expect. It's suitably medieval, and the effects themselves add to the experience in a non-irritating way. I do enjoy the graphics as well, although there are so many pickups and they each have their own icon, so as you can imagine, they're pretty small. Also, the manual is full of mistakes. I don't know why this is, but various things that are explained in the manual aren't actually accurate in-game. It's as if it was written based on a beta version of the game or something. The Legend of Prince Valiant is addictive in the way that a game like Civilization is. There seems to be so much to learn, and there is, but you can do this on the job, as it were. The difficulty settings are great in guiding you through, and you can still survive without knowing exactly what everything does. You'll learn by playing time and again. It's a good job that you'll probably want to do just that. Thanks so much for watching this video. The Kickstarter for the book is now live. Check the link in the description for how you can back the project and be the first to get your hands on the Portable Power Encyclopedia, featuring more than 900 Game Boy game reviews and a whole wealth of useful information on the world's favorite handheld console. See you later on.